The Accidental Entrepreneur is brought to you with the help of our sponsor, AWeber, the world's leading small business email marketing and automation service provider. Since 1998, AWeber has helped more than 1 million small businesses and entrepreneurs through its suite of web-based email marketing, automation tools, and education. AWeber, the best option when it comes to marketing your business. The podcast is also brought to you by the Alternative Board. Since 1989, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has been one of the leading peer advisory and business coaching organizations for independent business owners and CEOs across the world. By facilitating peer advisory boards, private one-on-one coaching, and strategic planning services, TAB helps business owners improve their businesses in ways that change their lives. And be sure to connect with our affiliate sponsor, GSM Growth Agency. They're boosting e-commerce businesses to 6 and 7 figures in revenue and cover everything from ads and social media influencers to making your website better. GSM Growth Agency focuses on taking businesses from startup success to bigger success, going above and beyond to make sure growth sticks around. They're all about cool ideas, lasting partnerships, and making your mark in the e-commerce world. And be sure to support the podcast by ordering some logo merchandise from our online store. Listen to all of our sponsors' commercials later in this episode and follow their links in the show notes to learn more about their products and services.
Some group of people.
Well, yeah, because you can't be everything to everybody. You can only see so many patients. You only have so much capacity. It's just the reality of, I understand.
And so I looked at that and said, that if I'm going to discriminate and I want to keep it small, the one way to weed people out is just say, no, you can't come in. Which
right. You can say, I'm sorry, we're at capacity, right?
Well, yeah. And to me, that was not what I wanted to do. I'm going to say it's a bad idea, but for me, it's like, that makes no sense at all. Because then you have somebody who's like, but I loved you and this is my husband. And you're saying no to my husband.
Right.
It's like, well, how do I say no to them? Well, this is my sister. Or this is my brother-in-law. I mean, where do you draw the line?
Yeah, a lot of stuff came from referrals, right? From other people that report you. Yeah. The same problem.
So we just raise fees. It's like you can discriminate that way. It's like
way to do it.
Yeah, if you have to pay to play, we aren't gouging people, but at some point, like anything else,
you're at the higher end of the market. So people would be like, you know what? It's not covered by insurance. Maybe I should go somewhere else.
Yeah, right, which is fine. And they're always willing to come back and revisit that decision if they want to. So that allows us to keep that whole thing small, which was so that's how we kind of thwarted that growth. So we were at this point about 5 years ahead of time, and I looked and said, that I'm gonna bring in an associate that wants to learn.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. We have a interesting guest. Oh, as always great guests, and a unique discussion about the business side of professional practices. David's coming on. He's a dentist. We're going to talk about what he does to help other dentists with their practices. So if you are listening on your favorite podcast directory, please leave us a 5-star review whenever you can. If you're watching us on YouTube, like us, subscribe, so we can keep bringing the kind of content that we've been able to do over the last 4.5 years. So let's get on with the show.
The information provided in these episodes is for entertainment purposes only. It is not a guarantee of success or to be construed as advice of any kind. You should always seek advice from local licensed professionals before making any decisions.
The dictionary defines an entrepreneur as a person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk. People often start a business without much choice, perhaps due to a job loss or just being dissatisfied at work, and they come up with an idea they just know can be successful. They become entrepreneurs by accident. That is to say, their success or failure happens by accident, not with intention. My name is Mitch Beinhacker. I'm a corporate attorney and a business advisor. You're listening to The Accidental Entrepreneur, my podcast about how to achieve success on purpose, not by accident. Join me along with our monthly guests, where we share our knowledge and help you get a hold of your business. And now on to today's episode.
Hi, I'm Dr. David Pearce, and I spent the first 38 years of my dental profession as a clinical dentist doing surgical reconstructive. And since then, I have gone on to coach dentists on the business side and help them realize the same potential in their practice that I was able to and truly make people's lives different. And I've written a couple books this year and excited about the future of dentistry.
All right, David Pearce. Dave, I forgot to ask you, where are you located?
My wife and I live between Florida and Montana. So we have one daughter in each place. We have homes in both places. So right now we're speaking from Florida, actually. We were in Montana a couple of weeks
Very
ago
nice.
for a couple of months. So yeah, it's
So
awesome.
you spend the summers in Montana and the winters more in Florida?
Well, we're figuring that out. Yeah, that when we our house in Florida, we built both homes and they're both going on at the same time, and but the Florida one was
Nice.
ahead of the Montana one, so we felt like it should have been done last May. Got done in December. So my wife was adamant, like I am not spending the summer in Florida, and but house construction said, yeah, you are, and so we were all last
Montana.
summer. Yeah, we were all last summer, and she plays tennis like 3-4 days a week, and she played tennis every day. She's like, "I love this Florida summer. Like, this is great." Like, so now that's so the other thing would be like, so what's a Bozeman, Montana winter going to look like?
Yeah.
So we'll figure that out. Yeah. So
Yeah. No, I've been up to Bozeman and fished the Bitterroot Mountains for fly fishing.
No, it's
up
awesome.
there. So
awesome water.
if you got to do fly fish,
I do. Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a good place to be. So,
Oh,
all right.
sure.
So, you'll have to invite me out. I'll have to come up to Montana at some point.
Yeah.
All right. So, we're talking today about, because you're a former dentist, you're retired, you sold your practice, right? And you basically work with, consult, and coach other dental professionals on basically the entrepreneurial side of growing your business. But maybe we could go back. Let's talk about your career, how you got started, how that developed, how you gained your entrepreneurial skills. In the second half of the show, we can talk about, advice for people. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's fun to look back on a journey, like being a show, it's about making plans. And of course I had all these plans, and what you and I decided, like the value of making plans is the making of the plan, not the plan itself, because it's going to change.
Yeah.
And so that was for sure the case. But maybe if I made like a little bit about me, is that I've always been a learner. I figured out that I'd enjoy the process of learning as well as the information, but just the process of learning. So in dentistry, I found that there's amazing opportunities now, Mitch, but especially even when I started, that you could come out of dental school, for me, feeling like I knew everything about it. Like here I go, I'm all revved up. And then I bought a practice in a building with some other much more seasoned dentists, and they were doing this much more elaborate, much more sophisticated dentistry than I'd ever seen. And I was like, why are you doing that? And then they says, well, you should go study with this person and study with that person. So that really kind of began that journey. So that over the next 20 years or so, I looked at and said, one, I want to learn how to master those skills because they're there. Like that's what you can do in dentistry. And two, that part was true. The other part that was not true was, and once I master those skills, then success will come to me. And of course, that's a misnomer that a lot of people fall into. And so, so over the next, the first couple of decades of my career, I just, became, had fellowships and board certifications and all sorts of things like that. And the general dentist that I was really became more of a surgical dentist, in the sense that I was spending my days
specialized.
Putting people to sleep, and just basically our office mantra was changing people's lives one smile at a time. So it got the people to come with what I would term, for sure, really a true dental disabilities. They couldn't smile, they couldn't reinvent themselves if they're recently separated or divorced. They couldn't go to parties and eat and things like that. So, but along the way too, on the learning part, was I met so many dentists along the way. They're just incredibly bright, way brighter than I would ever hope to be, and way more talented with their hands than I ever hope to be. And as we talk over lunch, I've always been a kind of a low profile person, but as we talk, it'd be like, so like you're doing this dentistry all day long, all week long, probably like I am. And I was amazed how often it's like, no, it's like how come? Like you can do it all. I said, well, insurance, my this, my that's, where I live, the economy, all these excuses came up.
Excuses, right?
Yeah, and I was from Central New York. They call Central New York the Rust Belt, because every single big manufacturer left over the 70s, 80s, and 90s. All those big places were gone, and yet we were thriving in that bad, whatever you want to call it, environment, economically, if you would. So that it kind of intrigued me. I've always kind of felt like, well, that's really a shame, because it's like available to you no matter where you are. It might be harder in some places than other, but it's available. Yeah, so there was that, and then someplace along the line, I realized because I'm more under the radar that like I'm like you, where you're like, I would see you as like, hey, I'm going to run a podcast. I'm going to be out there. I'm going to be talking to people all the time. I'm not
Right.
that. I'm not that person, And so, how do I influence the world? And somewhere along the way, somebody said, there's this phrase, David, do unto one that which you wish you could do for the world. And I kind of like latched onto that and said, like that, I can do that, So I mentor some through Big Brothers Big Sisters. I've had some mentorships that way with kids that have no father and that they're or dad's in jail and all sorts of stuff. And so that kind of fit with after dentistry, after the clinical part. So I'm still a dentist, still licensed and so forth. I can do it anywhere. But I looked at it and said, the downside of dentistry as a brick and mortar is you got to be there. And my wife and I we're tired of New York State. We're tired of Central New York in a sense, like it's a big world out there. Let's go to Florida. Let's go to Montana. Let's go to different places. You can't do that if you got to keep flying back to New York to work there.
Right.
So the coaching thing, I'd been in a mastermind group for the last 8 or 10 years with a bunch of very successful dentists talking about the business side always. It's just that's where we went to,
Sure.
And I found I was helpful in that group. And folks always said, like, you have an ability to take the complex, boil it down to something simple, come up with actionable steps that we could put into effect. And so I thought,
Right.
Why don't I marry those two? There's a lot of dentists out there that may feel like they don't want help, but they can't get where they want to get to.
Right.
Yeah. So if they can get out of their own way and get some help from somebody, not necessarily me, but somebody, I could help some of those people. So that's been the journey. Yeah. It's been really great.
Dave, as a dentist, you don't have the issues I have, right? Like if you're licensed to practice dentistry in New York, is it hard to then practice in Florida or Montana? I mean, the patient's issue aside, right?
Sure.
Could you open a new practice in Florida if you wanted to?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and it's really pretty easy to do it. Most of the states in the U.S., with about an exception of about a handful, and Florida and Montana are two of the ones that's very difficult to do that with. They're kind of like we're not going to grandfather you in for anything. You got to do this, and all these different things.
So it's the same thing. There's a state board you have to apply to, and so forth, and they'll let you in.
That's correct. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But without, not just because you want to write a check and say, I've been doing it for X number of years and I did all this stuff. They like, well, good for you, but you're going to go through just like everybody else. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's the same thing with the bar. You can't wave into Florida. You can't wave into California. You can't wave into a bunch of places. It's getting better though. Maybe Montana you can wave, but you still have the same issue, right? You'd have to start over. Yeah. Your patients aren't moving from New York to go with you to Florida. So, even I could do more.
What's with that?
I can do no. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, why won't they follow me? No, and it's just a short little plane ride. So, and I honestly felt like I don't want to do the clinical part anymore. I have a daughter in Bozeman who's a dentist, and she's on, I would say, the same track as I am, because who knows, but she's, she worked with me for 4 years, so she understands all the stuff we're doing. She saw all that, and she got very, she got ignited underneath that, looking like, that's what I want to do. Like that kind of stuff is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so she said to me, oh, okay, so Dad, like, why don't you come in, when I'm doing my first, this surgery, that surgery, whatever it is, put somebody to sleep, you could be there, you could be doing it. And I thought, like, is that like, how do I can't say no to her, I'm helping all the, and she and I are super close. So so the idea of like all the hoops I got to jump to get a Montana license to do clinical, and then to do it very rarely, relatively. And then when I do this, be like, well, I haven't done this in, 6 months, 18 months, 3 years, whatever. It's like, am I the best person to be, so I can be there as a consult, as a, like, well, here's the ideas, here's what you should be doing. And she and I are still studying together. As a matter of fact, later this week we'll be at a surgical course together, just studying together, just for the fun of it, to be together and learn together. Nice.
Yeah. No, I think. No, go ahead.
No, I think the idea of me picking up a drill or a scalpel again is like not going to happen. I don't want to do it.
It have to be an emergency.
Yeah, leave it for somebody else. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think as professionals, as a lawyer and you as a dentist and doctors and other professionals, we don't really. It's hard to figure out the whole part of how do I do this without me type of thing. That's what you said before, right? You said, the biggest problem with being a a professional with special skills is that they need you to do the special skills. You can't,
Right.
and the more specialized you become, the less easy it is to then bring in a young associate to take over your practice. If it's just, cleanings and fillings, I guess you could, right? You bring in a young associate who works for you for a long time, eventually takes over the practice. But if you're
Right.
doing specialty work, you got to find somebody who can, step into your shoes. So at what point did you start making, and how is a better word, right? A better question. Did you start to make that transition and figure out, okay, how do I make this transition, get out of my practice, not being able to do it anymore?
Yeah.
Do I just walk away, shut the doors, walk away, turn the lights off, give the keys back to the landlord? Or you spent a long time building a clientele?
Right.
Do you, so how'd you figure that part out? Because you seem to be a student of whatever it is you do. So,
Yeah. So I had a great plan. We talked about that, right? That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So I was teaching at a local hospital, the treatment planning part. They needed somebody, and I was looking for a way to give back into that organization. So I thought, well, this is a perfect thing, because that's, I think many people look at dentists and say we get paid to do fillings, crowns, implants, whatever it is. But I would say, no, we should get paid to think, and people and press that upon patients. Like, no, we're here, we're thinking, we're coming up with complex things. And so that was the idea. Like, treatment planning was part of their curriculum. And in that, I was meeting students coming through. And so it was just, I got to a point maybe like 4 or 5 years before I looked at it and said, my wife and I said, okay, so this will be our exit approximate date, this year, whatever that year was, 5 years before that. So we need to put stuff in motion. I personally had always looked at dentistry as more and more patients came into the office saying, we want to use your business for our dental services, like you're trying to build your client base, numbers of people. So as at some point you reach the capacity of your facility, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And then to me, the typical, I think, thing in dentistry is, well, then you bring in an associate, then you bring in this, and you get more people.
Right.
And I always looked at it and said, like, I don't want more. Like, more is just more people that I have to try to, keep running at a high RPM. Way. Yeah, right. It just gets too more.
That's like more people you're responsible for now.
Yeah, it's just harder to make that. If we looked at that, we want to have a really, really high level of clinical dentistry, but you know this, in any business, you're only as high as your weakest link. Like that's the level. So whatever level this is at, everything else is going to fall to that level, or you have to make it push that level. And certainly, the more people you get, the harder it is to get them all on board with that culture. And we were a little bit different in how we ran the office. There's no personal time, there's no personal vacation time, there's none of that. We were all there, nobody's there, because we figured out, like, we are our best when we're all here. And if somebody's on vacation, like, service is going to suffer. It just has to.
Right.
So there's things about the culture that made it harder to bring. So anyway, we just looked at that. So we're just going to, we're going to add new people all the time, because when you totally restore somebody, they don't need me anymore. So we have to replace them. But
it's not like they're coming for cleanings every 6 months, right? You were doing reconstructive work, and then they go to the regular dentist after you're done.
Many times, or even like you mentioned, they might be coming for their cleaning, but out of the cleaning, it might be like they don't need any work. Like, you're done, you're set. Unless something really odd happens, you're all set. And so I think that so maybe this is harsh, I guess I'd say, but to some degree, as you raise the number, as you get bigger, you're going to have to discriminate against something, like some group of people.
Yeah, because you can't be everything to everybody. You can only see so many patients. You only have so much capacity. It's just the reality of. I understand. And
so I looked at that and said, that if I'm going to discriminate and I want to keep it small, the one way to weed people out is just say, no, you can't come in. Which
you can say, I'm sorry, we're at capacity, right?
Well, and to me that was not what I wanted to do. I wouldn't say it's a bad idea, but for me, it's like, that makes no sense at all. Because then you have somebody who's like, but I loved you, and this is my husband, and you're saying no to my husband.
Right.
It's like, well, how do I say no to them? Well, this is my sister, or this is my brother-in-law. I mean, where do you draw the line?
A lot of stuff came from referrals, right, from other people that report you.
Yeah.
The same problem.
So we just raise fees. It's like, you can discriminate that way. It's like,
way to do it.
Yeah, if you have to pay to play, we aren't gouging people, but at some point, like anything else,
you're at the higher end of the market, so people would be like, you know what, it's not covered by insurance. Maybe I should go somewhere else.
Yeah, right, which is fine. And they're always willing to come back and revisit that decision if they want to. So that allowed us to keep that whole thing small, which was so that's how we kind of thwarted that growth. So we were at this point about 5 years ahead of time, and I looked and said, that I'm gonna bring in an associate that wants to learn quickly to become a partner, very small stake, but quick, so that like they knew this guy's actually real. He's going to sell me this place. And I looked and said, this person's actually real. They want to buy it. And it was right around that time that my daughter, who was going to school as a dentist in Salt Lake City, said, rather than, and they said, we love the West. We are going to live in the West. Like, this is where we want to be, is for sure. I mean, she and her husband grew up in New York State, where we were. She was
where in New York State were you, Dave?
Outside of Syracuse.
Sure. Okay.
Yep. And her husband was from northern New York, a little bit north of there. Great guy. And so they said, so in my mind, it's like, okay, well, they're loving it out there. And when we went to visit, it's like, I can see why. Like, if you've been to Salt Lake City, it's like the mountains are like, boom.
Salt Lake's very nice. Yeah.
Oh, it's gorgeous. And they just fell in love with everything about the West. And so it's like, okay. So, and then she said, but you know what? We think we're going to come back east for a while. I said, oh, well, what's that going to look like? She said, well, we're going to come back to Syracuse, and I want to do a residency program at a hospital there, which she ended up doing at the same hospital that I did mine in, just coincidentally. And so what do you think is going to happen after that? I said, well, maybe practice with you for a little while. We're going to end up out west, but practice with you. And so I thought, so if I bring in somebody to take over the practice, and then my daughter wants to practice with me, there won't be room for her. So it's either get rid of the guy that I promised he's going to sell it to for the sake of my daughter who's going to go away.
You already had him at that point?
No, I was right at that point. Like I was talking to a guy. I actually made it an offer-ish to a guy. And he's like, yeah, I'm really interested. I want a mentor type person and so forth. So anyway, long story short, he kind of went a different direction. And I said, good, that's great, because my daughter's coming in. So she practiced for 4 years. And during that time, the practice was for sale. But to your point, it had become a practice where not anybody could step in to take it over, because we'd created a niche. And so, and that created a selling liability. But
sure.
We worked our way through that. And in 2021, sold it. I got done seeing patients in 2022. And in the meantime, we were transitioning to Florida and Montana to live. And my daughter is in Montana now practicing, as I mentioned. And so all's well that ends well.
Yeah. So how did you sell the practice then at that point? Did you find
I just went to a brokerage.
Okay.
I'd owned a practice in a couple of practices before, one in New Hampshire, another one in another part of New York, for New Hampshire for about 10 years. And then my wife wanted to move back to Syracuse, where she was from. So I was used to that process of what it looks like, hire a broker, do this, do that. I didn't have some contacts with some of those folks. So the first one in New Hampshire was much more of a middle of the road type practice, because I was earlier in that clinical journey. That sold quite quickly, and then the one in New York literally took 3 years to find a buyer, but that's okay.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
No.
Yeah, okay. It worked out well. Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah. So there's different ways of going about it. Certainly, I think that the idea of bringing somebody in, to transition in, so that person knows it. That's certainly probably the easiest way to maintain the value of the practice. Really kind of allow it to maintain some similarities of what it was before, because they get assimilated into your culture and they make it their own eventually, but at least there's a gradual transition for patients and the team and so forth. So
right. So you did stay on for a while with the person who bought it for a little while to work with them?
Yeah, stayed on partly for that capacity. Although it's interesting, Mitch, I would think that for a new person coming in, that they'd be like, yeah, I want you to stay on for like maybe a really long time. And almost never does it work that way. It's almost like after 2 or 3 months, it's like, okay, I got it. You can go now. It's like, I see that all the time. So for me, it's more just finishing up these larger cases where, people had said, I want you to do the work, David, and so I didn't hire, but I hired you, David, to do the work, not somebody else, because it's pretty, relationship-based dentistry when people have that level of trust to let you do that stuff for them. And two, a lot of times they had already paid ahead of time. That was kind of our part of our business model was let's incentivize people to pay for everything ahead of time.
Come back, right? Sure.
Yep. So I owed them dentistry. They didn't owe me money. I owed them dentistry. So I wanted to make sure I was good on that. So yeah. So that took
Right.
about six months or so to go take that group of whatever they were, 80 people or so down to zero. And that was good. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. No, I think that is the challenge of
Can be.
professional practices. How do you look? I'm at the crossroad too. I used to have a bigger firm. I used to have like 5 partners, and we had associates and of counsel people and a bunch of 5,000 square foot of space. We were a full service commercial firm. And then one day I woke up and I was like, well, our gross went up, but my net's going down. Like I'm making less money after all our expenses. And I wasn't doing the things that I enjoyed to do. So it was hard. I lost friends and changed everything. But now I'm kind of at a crossroads. Like, what do I do now? Like, because I don't want to bring on an associate. I don't want to bring on more employees. My practice is very virtual.
Yeah.
I rely on technology. So I'm going to have to, find that bridge to cross at some point. We'll see what happens. I don't want to be doing this till I'm 98. That's for sure.
That's right.
I know people that are. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And well, I mean, I guess if you do, as long as it's a hobby, like from about age 55 on, I guess that's okay. But if you're doing it because it's like the only way I can maintain my lifestyle, then we should have done some different planning earlier on there.
Yeah. I mean, I've toyed with every once in a while. I get firms that approach me because there's not a lot of us that can develop business and have business sense and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's just the numbers never work out. They want to cut my income in half, and they got some story about what a great opportunity it is. I'm like, what?
Yeah, right.
I'm 56 years old. What do I need to go back halfway back? What do I? So it never seems to work out. But maybe it will at some point. So why don't we do this?
Yeah. And dentistry might be different. Just an aside on that, for folks, if there's dentists and or maybe attorneys listening, but like in dentistry, you can appreciate that some people come in, maybe it's a couple, but lots of times just one person, where it could be that some of their dentistry, maybe some of their legal needs are very not right, but bread and butter type stuff. And like any attorney could do it. And then yet they also might have some other very specialized needs where they really need a Mitch to do it, or something special about it where they need Mitch to do it. And so in dentistry, there's some value of having another dentist there that can do the bread and butter stuff, but at the same point in time, have the ability to do more with the person that's a little bit more specialized. So I don't know if that's something that applies to the law, but dentistry, that definitely applies.
A little bit. The biggest problem with law, dentistry is more like accounting, right? You got to see people, the bread and butter stuff, right? You have every 6 months you're doing cleanings, people, right, or their teeth fall out. They got to come to you on a regular basis. Accounting, you got to file your taxes every year. You got to pay your bills, whatever. With law, I have some business owners that are on retainer, and I do things for them every month, but there's no triggering event where they have to come to me in April and they got to come to me in September,
Yeah.
So it makes it more of a challenge. I'm not saying it's not doable, but it's definitely, that's interesting. It's definitely a way to look at it. Well, why don't we do this? Let's take a commercial break. I got a couple of people that pay me a little bit of money, and then we'll come back and we can talk about, the book you're working on. I think it's coming out soon, right?
Yep.
And the consulting you do and the advice for maybe not just dentists, but certainly for professionals as to, how to think of things as an entrepreneur as opposed to a professional. I think that's the argument.
Great. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, great.
All right, let's.
Here's a word from our sponsors. Looking to market and grow your business? Or perhaps you're just getting started and want to hit the ground running? AWeber is the best choice for online email marketing and automation of your business. From maintaining a subscriber list to drip campaigns and landing pages, AWeber gives you tools and integrations that make marketing easy and fun. As our partner and sponsor, we use all their tools to promote the podcast and market our law firm. AWeber, the best alternative for online marketing. For over 30 years, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has built a thriving community of forward-thinking CEOs and business owners who want to radically improve their companies. Through unique combinations of one-on-one business coaching, participation in monthly TAB board meetings with other non-competing owners, a suite of strategic tools and customized strategic planning workshops, TAB membership can deliver greater strength to your business and a better work-life balance for you and your family. All packaged in a streamlined and affordable service that the people at TAB invite you to try risk-free. Are you struggling with managing advertising due to a lack of time or expertise? Perhaps you're facing challenges in scaling ads for your store. Are you feeling lost when strategies have no success? GSM Growth Agency is your reliable partner in overcoming these business challenges. Feel the impact of collaborating with a team dedicated not only to short-term goals, but also to building long-term partnerships and achieving sustained success. Embark on an exciting journey to redefine the possibilities of e-commerce and create a legacy of unparalleled excellence. Take decisive action now. Follow their link in the show notes to receive a complimentary audit of your Shopify store conducted by a GSM expert. Propel your e-commerce game to new heights with GSM Growth Agency. Follow the link in the show notes to learn more about all of our sponsors. And now back to our show. All right, David. So we are back.
Great.
Since this is an entrepreneur's podcast, and we always want, and that's how we got connected through Podmatch,
Yeah.
I think it was, right? As a business owner consultant, really to dentists.
Yep.
Tell me, let's talk about what that looks like for the average dentist, because I think a lot of dentists go into the practice of dentistry with kind of in the back of their mind, right? Like, well, eventually I got to run this practice or take it over or go somewhere else and start a new practice, because it's kind of like the kind of thing that you guys do. There aren't a lot of, at least not near me, there aren't a lot of large dental practices. There are there are practices like one major dentist, and then maybe, I don't know, an orthodontist in the practice, and then maybe one other young associate. At least near me, there aren't any of these large practices like being rolled up in the veterinary business now and the legal, I mean, in the medical field. Are you seeing that? Like, is there a transition where smaller dentists are able to roll into larger practices, or that's not really happening as far as you've seen?
Yeah, it happens on the ownership side of it. I think that it seems like that maybe the newer generation, and I'll just say maybe they have it right. Like, for instance, if I look back at this was 35 years ago, I talked to a dentist who was 20 years my senior, and my kids are young, or maybe whatever, my kids are young, and they're in their early 30s. And so he said, I think it's great, that like you coach your kids soccer and you do that kind of stuff. That's cool. My kids are young. I and the other dentist, we'd go out 3-4 nights a week. We'd have dinner together, have a drink, talk about dentistry, whatever. That's just what we did. I think that's great. And then now the kids, like my daughter and other people look and say, I'm never going to work as hard as you guys did. Like, there's no way. I want to come in at 8 o'clock, get done at 5, leave, check out, and I'm done. And so to some degree, that entrepreneurial, I want to own the business mentality might be less in the newer dentists and maybe in young professionals as a whole. And therefore, who's going to run the businesses? So the corporate, so the corporate concept of dentistry has really grown up where, business people will look at it and say, well, we can buy these practices and run it. And then these dentists, because they don't want to own it, they become an employee of the corporation. So from the
like on the MD side, where they've done that, they sell to the hospital, or they sell to a management company, that type of thing.
It could be. Like, I'm not that familiar with that, but for instance, like if you look at a company called Aspen Dental, I don't know if you've driven around, you've seen Aspen Dental. So you may look at that. It says kind of like McDonald's. It says McDonald's everywhere, but like McDonald's is owned by a local guy. Probably, it's a franchise concept, and many of the Aspens are that same way. They might have been originally, Bob's dentist, and then Aspen took over, and it might stay Bob's then if Bob's still there. Otherwise, Bob believes them, and they turn into Aspen Dental. But they're hiring like one dentist might come in, and that dentist like, I want to buy it, so they buy it, and then Aspen supports them. So they have ownership, but they're not doing the hiring, they're not doing the firing, they're not doing the software is an Aspen software, things like that. So there's more and more of that going on, and then I think historically though, Mitch, it's really interesting that most dentists seem to be solo type guys. Like you're right, they kind of practice by themselves, whereas attorneys and physicians, you see groups of 5 and 10 and 50 and 100 and 200 all working under the same roof. So I don't know what created what, but it definitely sees that dentists tend to be smaller in their organizations.
Right.
So there is a lot of that.
But you see that may be changing where you're going to see larger.
Well, I'm not sure. Larger ownership part, like bigger groups are doing that. And then some dentists, I was with a an investing group over the weekend. They had a little thing, and there was another dentist there who's probably in his mid-30s, and he's a general dentist, but he owns 11 practices now in the Tampa area. He just sees one for sale and he buys it, and he incorporates it into his own little corporation that he's putting together. And a lot of the guys will get this, I'll bundle it up and I'll sell it to somebody that already has 400 or 800 or 1,000.
Well, that's the attractive part, right? Because if you're the local, because obviously this guy's not going to 11 offices and seeing all the patients. That's not possible. So
correct. Yeah.
But the attraction to you is, Dave, why don't you sell to me? We'll roll you up into our organization. You'll still run your practice. We'll give you, I don't know, services, technology, whatever, marketing. Yep. And then we'll all sell out as a group to a bigger, private equity firm or something like that.
Yep.
At some point, and you can have an exit strategy.
Yeah, right. Yep. And sometimes it's just that I'll become an employee of my own practice. You buy it, you run it, you all that stuff. I think that a lot of as I talk to dentists, it's really common. They'll say so what's the frustration of dentistry? And it's never like, the crown fell off. It's never on the technology clinical side of it. It's almost always about, because I participate with insurance, which is a choice, but because I've chosen to participate in insurance, and then there's a less than positive conversation about dental insurance and how it's limiting them, and or my employees, that constant thing. And so to me, as I've looked at that, I said, well, the beauty of dentistry as versus medicine is you don't have to participate with insurance. We had lots of patients with insurance, but they still paid what our fee was, and we just made arrangements for how they're going to pay the difference. And great.
Right, that's exactly what I do.
Yeah, we'll get every cent we can out of your insurance for sure. We'll make sure you worked hard to get that benefit. We'll get it all. Course. But on the other hand, that's not. I'm not going to limit the revenue and the profitability of the business based on that entity called insurance. It's just like.
Right, if you went into network or whatever. Yeah, but in our area, the good dentists are not in the networks. Yeah, just don't have to be.
Yep. And then on the team side, to me, on the dentistry front, I know for me, my journey was just pitifully slow, because I figured once I become a clinical master, all this other stuff's going to take care of itself. That was the big lie that I told myself. Right. And then, when I figured out at some point along the way, people probably hitting me with a club and saying the problem is the guy in the mirror, David, and you fix him and your business will get better, but it's never going to get better than him. So I had to become a much better leader, much better, understanding of that. And how do you have conversations, and how do you enter into how do you create a sales organization, in your office that actually is meant to help patients say, that whole, like for you too, to me, it's like, so somebody comes into a law firm, a dentist, they kind of know what you are before they go in there. You help them identify problems that they say, yeah, problem. And then you say, here's a solution. And they say, yeah, that's a solution. And then they say, no, I'm not going to do it.
I got to close them.
Why did that happen? Why did you come here? So that idea of getting a client of yours or a client of ours, whatever you want to call them, clients, patients, customers, to say yes to themselves, really, they're walking out with the legal agreement that they want. It's going to protect them. They're walking out with the dentistry that's going to fix their problems, fix their disabilities. And so it makes no sense for them to say no. It just hurts them.
Right, especially with the dentist. What are you there for?
Yeah.
I mean, you're there for because you got a problem. Something bothers you. You have an ache in your tooth, or you have a problem, whatever, and now you're not doing anything about it.
Yeah, it doesn't. If you looked at it, and I've said this to so many people, I don't know outside of dentistry because I don't have lots of people I talk to, but in dentistry, the idea of selling is you don't do that. We don't sell.
No, right?
It's a horrible thing. You can't sell anything. People can buy. Yeah, people can buy, but they didn't. But I didn't sell anything. They just happened to buy. Yeah. So just getting over that and just saying, well, if a patient comes in and they say yes, and they say yes to whatever dollar amount that is. So that person's going to benefit. If you're doing really life-changing, significant stuff, they're going to benefit for years from that.
Right.
But the business, the very next day, the business says, now I got to find somebody else. We benefited for one day, and now we got to get that revenue again. Whereas that patient benefited forever. And if the patient says no, then for us it's they said no, so therefore that whole block of time that we were going to work on them is still open. Well, we can stick somebody else in there. So we didn't really lose. we might stick somebody in there that's even more profitable than the person that said no.
Right.
And they walk away with nothing. So who's the big loser?
Right.
Like they are.
Exactly. Right. So, well, a lot of that's mindset, how you look at it.
If they say yes, yourself, they're the big winner. If they say no, they're the big loser. So why wouldn't we get good at helping people to get out of their own way and say yes? Like get really good. Like, get really good at it. Like, make that your focus. So once I started looking at that and I just like internalized that and said like that's just not hype. Like that's if you're doing it properly. Like I'm not talking about whatever, manipulating people or all kinds of stuff like that. Like it's got
finding fillings that don't exist. And things like
it's a win-win. But once you look at it, it's like, no, this is what this person needs and that kind of stuff. Like the dentists I study with, they'd be like, so do you think your dentistry is wrong for them? It's like, no, it's the exact right thing for them. And when they say no, it's like, okay. It's like, no, it's not okay. We got to help that person. And then they go out and they do an RV or they remodel their kitchen or, they're saving for a brand new car or whatever. It's like, it's not that people are wealthy. I'm not saying that, but all the time people are able to take discretionary money and they can put it in different places in their life. And dentistry is competing against that stuff. It's not competing against food and water and shelter and things like that. It's just not.
Right. No, absolutely. So, I think a lot of it is helping people to get to say yes to the things that they know they should be or want to be doing. You just got to figure out how to make it, affordable for them. That's not, I don't think that should be an obstacle. A lot of it's mindset, I think. But do you find that is a common problem with dentists, that they're either, I don't know if the word is right, afraid to ask for the sale or, don't really approach it from, hey, I'm helping these people. They look at it like they're asking for something and they're uncomfortable about it.
Totally that, yeah. And I would say, it starts with the dentist leader, and then it goes right through the organization. So that for me, in our office, I think part of our success as once the guy in the mirror got better, once I got better and better and internalized and your word mindset, I love that, Mitch, because that's totally what it is.
Of course. It's between your ears is the problem.
It is. Exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's right. Big problem.
You don't have to take them to get them a mental surgery where they had to put a drill in their brain and fix something. Right. Yeah. It's how they look at things. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Right.
And dentistry as a profession, we got involved with dental sleep medicine, which is really a medical service, medical treatment, for dental sleep apnea or for sleep apnea, and dentists are getting involved with that. So we got involved with that, and therefore, for a short while, we had a very robust program, and then I decided it just didn't fit, so we just shut it down. But while we were doing that, we were in the medical community, working with sleep physicians and ENTs and all these different people. And for them, success was 50% better. You can make somebody 50% better. That's medical success. That's their metric. And for dentistry, it's so 50% of my crowns fell off or hurt and people couldn't eat. It'd be
right. That sounds right.
You might just shut the door. Either that or you're going to commit suicide. It's what the hell is wrong with me? It's and so dentistry, the predictability of it is super, super high, So for us to do that, it's not I wonder if you're going to get better. It's you're going to get way better. I can show you pictures of what you're going to look like when you get done. You're going to look like that. It's
exactly. Your teeth are not going to fall out of your mouth on the way home.
That's right. It's so predictable. Yeah. So to help folks and help teams, help a team become a leader. And I just think, that whole leadership thing, in a whole society now, it's just missing. It's you and I are at an age where, I can remember, this is such an aside, but it's just maybe for your younger audience. I can remember in middle school, another kid and I were running down the hall as he was chasing me. I'd done something. We were friends, but he was just chasing me. I'm going to get you, David. And so he's chasing me. And I watched this teacher who was at these little alcoves by every door. I watched the teacher. He was standing there. He stepped out and we made eye contact for a second, and he ducked back in really fast. And I knew this guy was a very physical guy. And I knew when we come by him, he is coming out of there. He is going to nail us. So when I got really close to him, and my friend was about 10 feet behind me. We got really close to him. I did a really quick, boom, the outside. Sure enough, this guy's arm came out like this, just to string us at the neck. And my friend went boom and boom.
Right into him.
On the floor. It's what's the rule about running? And I was going down the hall, what's the rule about running, And it's oh, I'm sorry. I don't run the hall. It's that's right. Get up. No more running. And then, now it's oh my God, he'd be out. The teacher would be fired. I mean, all that leadership stuff that we looked at. So you have to respect and things like that. It's just, So anyway, tirade on my part, but
No.
but to expect the team members to come in, I said all of them to me, it's like, we've never been in a position where we've seen leadership, handled well. In dentistry, not sure about in law. A lot of it's female driven. I over the course of years, I had way more single ladies with children than I did any other demographic in my office. As far as so here they are, in a not dysfunctional, but it's a very hard
patients or people that work for
employees. Yeah, single females is a very common.
The hygienists, right?
Yeah, right. Sure. That's the typical worker demographic in dentistry. And then many of them are single moms. So in that whole thing, it's like, what's your relationship with your father and what's your relationship with this? And oftentimes it's like, not so good. So anyway, you're trying to put all these people together and say, so how are we going to make you a leader when you've never seen leadership really, role modeled in your life? And it's true. Yeah. It's hard. So I think those are struggles. One, fix your own head so you can become a good leader, because you may not have ever seen leadership demonstrated for you well. You've never embraced it. And then how do I become better at that? And then how do I impart that on my team so they can become better? Because once you put that together, then the team's following the leader. The patients want to be led. Not really, but they do. They want somebody who says, this is what we can do. I have confidence in this. I'm not going to make it easy on you. Like if you say, I don't want to do it, like, well, how come? Like, what's going on?
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah. No, I think the whole team idea is really important, and people don't realize the customer service experience that it improves. Having everybody on the same page, having them buy into your vision. Yeah. I think it improves the workplace for the employees. Oh, huge. Feeling like they have a purpose, they know what the hell's going on. And I think, especially in professional practices, I miss that a lot. You go to law firms and it just doesn't look like anybody knows what they're doing. You walk in, the customer experience should be the same when they walk in. They should be greeted and this and that and put through this process and learn to feel comfortable and intake the same way, right? Especially with dentistry. I mean, you're going, somebody's sticking their hands in your mouth and they're going to drill holes in your head. Yeah. And, these machines that vibrate and stuff like that and make it. And I know some people that have terrible teeth and they're just afraid to go to the dentist. They are afraid to have anybody touch their face or their mouth and stuff like that. So
that's right.
If you make it a comfortable experience and everyone buys into that, clearly that improves the, your business, your whole business model.
Exactly right. Yeah.
But you're right. I guess a lot of people coming out of dentistry school, they just like law school too. I'm going to go get a job. What do you mean? I'm going to be a dentist.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're not. You're going to be a business owner who also fixes people's teeth.
There you go. That's right. Yeah. And unfortunately, if they pick that up, it's going to be accidental, unless they, have somebody like you, that kind of grabs hold of them, or they somehow know you and they respect your ideas and they say, so Mitch, how does this work? And everything you just said is applicable to every business. Like, the book that I wrote might use dental examples or some of the stuff, or here's a system you could use in dentistry, but you could use that same system virtually anywhere, because businesses are businesses, people are people. Doesn't matter what kind of service or product your end user is getting. It's how you get there is going to be the same almost all the way through. So you're right. Absolutely, you're spot on with all the stuff you just said.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same tool. So the ironic thing is, it's not like somebody has to have an epiphany in life and get lucky enough to meet you or me, because it's going to be their only chance to be successful. It's all out there.
That's right.
They can go find the books and go to the seminars and join the mastermind groups and the network and learn from other people that have done it and failed and succeeded and so forth along the way. But a lot of people, they don't. I mean, people you reach will be 20% of the 80-20 rule. That's basically it.
Yeah. If it's 20, I don't know. It's hard to find that 20 sometimes, right?
20 of the 20, right?
Yeah,
it's
right.
Like the people that really need your help you don't really reach, because they're not open to it. They're not looking for it. They're not,
Yeah, that's true.
So that's the irony of it.
But the fun about coaching for me of people is like, and I even like in my presentations, I try to be really transparent about everything. Our personal finances, it's like, it's just numbers. It is what it is, And so, but to look at that and say, like, if we just take your trajectory of a younger, like in your first 10 years of your working career, and just accelerate that, hold your feet to the fire, have somebody to hold your feet to the fire. You look and say, I know I need to do it, I just don't do it. Oh, but you're going to pay me to make you do that, and give you good information and help you make decisions along the way that just totally fit, so you're not shooting yourself in the foot all the time. that it can just speed up that trajectory so much. And that's something that, like you just mentioned, you can go books and podcasts and masterminds and all that stuff. And that's probably, I'm guessing, I don't know, maybe how you got to where you are. And that's certainly how
it's a start. You got to keep taking it to the next level and finding the people to work with and mentor with, because you can't do it steadily over the next 40 years. You're never going to get off the ground. No. You have to accelerate in order to really reach those kind of growth levels.
That's right. Yep. Exactly right.
Yeah. How's so when did you sell the practice? 2021?
Yeah, 2020. Yeah, late fall 2021, October 2021. So about 2 years.
It's been about 2 years. Yeah, 2 years. So how are they doing without you?
They went through some really transitions. Yeah, for sure. I think that the initial thought was well, I mean, there's never a mistake because it could have worked out great. But the original thought was, fee for service, don't accept insurance and so forth. That's going to be a hard task to do. So I think we'll reinvent it as a kind of a typical type practice that's working with insurance, some insurances, that kind of stuff. And then what they found was that wasn't the niche at all, and the people that were looking for what we had created, the reputation of that in the community. Was like, well, then this isn't what we wanted, and the customer's experience, fell as well, and so they had some turnover of the team because the team looked at it and said, well, we embraced what we were doing, and now we're not quite doing that the same, or it's not the same. So different people in there, and those people didn't grasp the culture that we had. So but now they're rebuilding it in the direction that they want to. And so it's fiscally sound and doing well. I say that as much as I know. I offered to help beyond the transition point of just to at a gratis level, just to keep things going. And but I can see why that wasn't accepted, just because we're not going to do it the way David, and I guess they felt like I had an agenda to do it only the way I knew, so which isn't true, but I can appreciate why they would feel that way. So, So they're doing well, and some of the employees that had originally have been moved up into a management position, and they're doing there, and we chat, not very often, but occasionally we'll touch base. So that's nice to hear from them. Yeah.
Okay, and then you've been coaching, consulting for what, 18 months to 2 years, something like that? Or were you doing it before much when you were working?
Yeah, conceptually doing it before, but I didn't have the time to really devote to it the way I wanted to. That part of my personality is, if I could, like my wife will say, you're intense, right, David? And I'd be like, huh? Intense?
You don't seem that. Yeah.
Intense? What do you mean intense? So I kind of like that. So, so the idea, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it well. And so I felt like I can't do it the way I want to do it, but I also could see once I'm not tied up to going to the office, 4 days a week and other stuff to maintain that the way I wanted to, then that frees up a whole bunch of time to really devote into something else. And so it's been fun.
Yeah. So how are you growing that business? You don't just open the window and say, "Hey, I'm here."
Yeah.
Right. You got to connect with people. So what do you do?
That's been a real fun challenge, quite honestly. Yeah. Because, initially, this is all boring, but when I first started off, I had a couple of people that knew me said, well, you just got so much stuff. You have this part. Some folks out of the mastermind is people are just going to come to you. I can't tell how that's going to work in the universe, but you just keep throwing yourself out into the universe. It's just going to come.
The laws of attraction.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I believe in that. There's no question.
Right. If you're putting yourself out there.
Right. Yeah. So that's the catch. That's the catch.
Right.
Yeah. That's the catch. So how does David under the radar, David, who I don't have lots of associations. I've never gone to social groups or anything like that. I just
right. You don't have a huge network of
exactly.
You didn't need it.
I don't have that network. Exactly right. And so anyway, I thought, if I'm going to do in this coaching thing, I'll hire a coach, and then they can each teach me some of the fundamentals of what coaching looks like at a truly professional level. And so there's a story behind that. But anyway, I ended up with a coach. And so he said, the first thing you're going to have to do is come up. And what I originally said, I'm not going to come up with a manual. And I talked to him like, you don't want to come up with, I can't see you writing some huge manual, Dave. That's just not what you'd want to spend your time doing. You're just good at sitting down with somebody, talking through stuff, figuring stuff out, coming up with a plan, do it. And so I talked to his coach. He said, the first thing you're going to have to do is come up with some deliverables, David, because people don't know you. And so you're going to have to come up with a manual. That's what.
Yeah, meaning you need collateral materials.
I have to hand you something.
Here's the workbook.
Yeah.
Let's go through it.
Right. Yeah. You got to come up. You got manual.
You got to create intellectual property. There's no question about it.
There you go. Yeah. So that was like I said, like, I'm not going to do that. I said, you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to do that. Like, oh, shit. Right. So, like, whatever, 500 or 600 pages later of a manual, it's like, okay, good. Manual's all baked out.
500 or 600 pages?
Yeah. Yeah. So I just sat down. I got all this time.
Does it need to be that big?
Probably not, but, so some of it's addendums and examples and things like that of different things. The actual manual itself is maybe 400 pages. So
sure,
yeah,
just dropping the bucket.
Yeah. So then I get done with that, and then I tell some other people and say, well, that's great that you got that, but if you're going to really establish yourself as an expert in the field, other than what you've done, you have to have a book. So
so I have,
right. So I have to told me that for years. So I have to write a book. Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 books later, and I'm working on my 3rd book now, and the first one will get published. It should be done end of this month. It should be actually.
So you're on your 3rd book before your first book's been published?
Yeah, it was funny. Well, see, but it's because it sounds like amazing, but it isn't, and I'll tell you why. Because I did all this work on this manual stuff, right? So I did a lot of this kind of stuff about how do you, like in the manuals, like how do you create a mindset? How do you create leadership? What does that look like? How do you create systems? What does that look like? How do you create? What's all this stuff look like as part of to walk somebody through to run their business well?
Right.
And the title of the book became Peak Success: Entrepreneurial Guide to Business Prosperity, which is essentially what I coach.
Right.
And so I talked to a publisher. Some friends said, well, here's a good publisher. I'd met the owner a number of years ago. And so they said, well, typically it takes about a year. The first 3 to 5 months, you're going to work with a ghostwriter, most likely, because most people don't want to write their own books. And And so I said, well, I want it done in 6 months. Typical intense David. And they said, well, and I said,
mine took 3 years, by the way.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. It's fine. It's fine. Right. It's a journey. Yeah.
Well, I was going back. It wasn't like 3 years of constant work. It was,
right. Well,
it's getting in the way of life and work and things like that.
Yeah. And so I said to them, well, so I'm going to write it on my own. Because at that point I figured like prior to doing that manual, I thought like I can put everything I know on a 3x5.
You wrote the manual yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. So you got enough content, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so they said, okay, so 3 to 5 months. So how about if I do it like in 2 weeks? And so the woman that was there said, "That's nice, David.
2 weeks.
Yeah, that's nice, David. Why don't we say 5 weeks? If you can get to us,
right? It would be a miracle if you did 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
So 7 days later, I gave them the manuscript.
You're kidding.
No. But I really had a lot of that stuff. So I was like, okay, I can rewrite this. I can reword this. And my head was already like in that trench, and I had time.
Did you not sleep for 7 days? Did you?
Well, a little bit. But you'd wake up like at 2 or 3, like, oh, this is a great, you'd write whatever, whatever. Yeah. So, so to write them fast, can come up quickly, but it was mostly because I wasn't distracted with all the stuff you're talking about, and I had just gone through the whole process, really, essentially. So I understand. Yeah. So that, and then the second one, to me, it's always been a thing about, like, I think which I would preach to anybody. This, right? You can make your business have incredible revenue streams if you do all the business stuff right, which you were just talking about. Customer service, leadership, all that kind of sales system.
Right.
You have all that stuff. You have lots of revenue, and then, but what happens to that revenue? What's the translation of that revenue into personal wealth? Like, is that
okay? So that's the second book you're working on.
That's the second book. And that's done. And it might just stay as an ebook type thing. I'm not sure what I'll do with it. So that's done, and it's ready to go. I went online to like a service publisher type one to go to and edit it for me and that kind of stuff. And so that's
like an on-demand type of thing. You don't have to keep like a warehouse of books.
Yeah,
I don't either.
Right. Yeah, and
absolutely.
And that's it. Yeah, and I think that's as important as much as the other one, because I assume you've met a lot of people, made a lot of money in their life, and they die. They retire, and it's like, I can't retire. I have no money. It's like, what happened?
I think there's a vacuum in everybody's pocket. Just sucks money out of you.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how much you throw in it; it just gets stronger. The vacuum.
That's true.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So that's the second book. Is really just kind of like, hey, if you're it doesn't matter where you are, but if you're in your 30s or 40s, like, here's some shit you can do that can truly make a difference.
Hold on to what you make. Right. They always say that it's not what you make that matters, it's what you keep.
Right. Yeah. You go.
That really has an impact on your life.
That's so true. Yeah. So my wife and I have been blessed with that, so that we don't have to worry about some of the stuff that we could have had to worry about if we hadn't done those things. So, yeah. So anyway,
Very good. All right.
Yeah.
So we've been about an hour. Any parting words of advice for maybe the young dentists out there? Not sure what they're going to do.
Yeah. Well, certainly if my mistake was to think that mastering dental skills is going to translate into business success or revenue success or people saying yes, like that's not true.
Okay.
So just be aware of that. Keep this, clinical success, mastering skills is a piece of the puzzle. You can't do it.
But it's not enough.
Yeah, you can't do what you don't know how to do. But then from there, just really become a student of mindset leadership. Like think about opportunity, think about growth, think about, I think that same conversation you and I, Mitch, like, when patients say no, like you're hurting them. And one thing I said to my team all the time was, and it's not the same, right. But when people came in, we worked on, like, there were a lot of tears. Like people would look at that and say, like, I'm so embarrassed. Like your friend said, I can't, like, I don't go to the dentist. And at some point it's like, I'm embarrassed and they're going to judge me, or they did judge me. And people walk in and say, oh, man, like when did you get your teeth cleaned? Like they look like hell.
Right.
They look like hell. Like, why do I want to go back to that place?
Right.
So we've scarred people for sure as a profession by just judging them, not intentionally, not maliciously, but nonetheless judge them. To figure out, how do I help my team get into a place where when patients say yes, that they are helping themselves, and not the same thing. But what I'd say to my team is, like, for instance, if your husband came home and say, hey, honey, I heard you went to the doctor today. How'd that go? And then I said, yeah, he said I have prostate cancer. And they say, like, oh, so what are you going to do? Nothing. Oh,
right.
Okay. So just to remind you, you're picking up Billy at soccer, and I'm going to go take Susie to dance.
Right, just like life.
Yeah, like you wouldn't do that. You'd be like, whoa, wait. Like, no. Like, what are you talking about? No. And how come? Why does the patient say no? And you're like, okay, well, we'll see you in 6 months. But your husband says no. It's because you care for him. Well, you should. Right. Well, we need to care for these people, not the same way, but the same way. Like, don't accept that no. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. You knew why you came here. You knew you had a problem. Have I done something wrong? Have I judged you? Have I done anything like that? And if the answer is no, you got to help me understand this, Mrs. Jones, because this is going to change your life if you just listen.
Right.
And
absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's definitely changing from, you're asking people to do something for you, then you're helping them. That's what you're a professional for. So you should take that approach. Well, I can't thank you enough. I'm sorry it took us a little while to get together. We had to reschedule a couple times.
No worries. Yeah.
We will put a link in the show notes to the book.
Awesome.
When it comes, is it out yet or not?
No, they said end of October, but to me that means probably like middle of November. Things always get pushed off.
Okay, well, the podcast will be out in several months, so when it comes out, we'll put a link in the show notes. People can buy the book, and I appreciate Dave giving me not only a good conversation about entrepreneurship, but a different view of the dental profession and where it's going today. So
awesome, yeah. Thank you for your time, Mitch. Yeah, it's a great show.
All right, I'll go to the closing credits and. Stick around.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Accidental Entrepreneur. Opening and closing music written and performed by Howie Moskovich and made to order music. For information about Howie and his music services, please follow the link in our show notes. If you like the podcast, please tell others about us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and most of the other podcast directories. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and feel free to share our episodes on social media. If you have any questions or comments, ideas for the show, or you'd even like to appear as a guest, reach out to us by email at info@beinackerlaw.com.
The Accidental Entrepreneur is hosted by Mitch Beinacker and produced by Beinacker Law. If you'd like to learn more about our business and legal services, you can find us on social media or visit our website at beinackerlaw.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to our feed to be notified of all future episodes.